Hello guys, it's not much of the internet connection left in Russia, but they still use it to spread some conspiracy theories. And even though many seem very unrealistic, they are worth of our attention. Because they tell a lot about the mindset of the Russian people and their moods and attitudes towards 2026. And perhaps one of my favorite theories is about a coup that Shoigu, Putin's former Minister of Defense and still a very influential person in the Russian politics, is preparing. Many Russians speak about the coup of Prigozhin, which also seemed quite unrealistic and during which internet shutdowns followed the army of Prigozhin all the way to Moscow. A similar situation now repeats in more and more Russian regions, including Moscow and St. Petersburg, that for quite a long period of time were totally sacred to Putin's regime and totally protected from any problems other regions in Russia encounter. But now, after weeks without internet, and this practice becomes more and more widespread, more and more prolonged, people start thinking, why is this happening? And honestly, inside Russia, it's quite popular to believe in a coup or a preparation for such a coup, and that FSB and the Kremlin actually protect Putin by shutting down this internet. Not that much from the apolitical Russians, who we all know are really bad at organizing protests and changing anything in their country, but against people like Shoigu or any other political military leaders that may get some support from the population if they choose to change Putin. So let's discuss what is happening in Moscow and other regions with internet and how Russians interpret these problems, what they see as a signal of Putin's weakness, and what can we expect for the end of the Russian war and many other wars that Russia is the root cause actually. My name is Anna, I'm from Ukraine, and I'm always happy to explain this part of world to you so that you do not follow Russian narratives that unfortunately are still very widespread even among the media that supports Ukraine, but still looking for the information. They read official Moscow sources instead of watching some real videos from Russia, analyzing the words of their experts, vloggers. This tells us more about the real state of the Russian Federation, the mindset of the people, and what they actually fear. And trust me, there are a lot of fears they express online. Maybe another reason why shutdowns are more and more common. Subscribe to know the truth, share these videos to demonstrate your solidarity with Ukraine. This matters a lot. You know that the problem with internet became very serious in Russia, and you can see that it's not the combat actions that influence this or natural disasters, because look at me in Ukraine, under constant Russian attacks, we have internet. Why? Because we're not hiding the truth. We are media literate, we do not share the places of the Russian attacks, but we talk about politics, we talk about economy, we talk about fun, and we use internet for businesses. One of the main things that makes a lot of Russians very disappointed with the modern state of their country is how internet shutdowns destroy their businesses. That's what we do not talk enough about. You all know that 2025, 2026 became very bad for the Russian economy and various industries that are not directly connected with this war. And a lot of small and mid-sized businesses decided to close because they are not able to pay VAT tax that grew tremendously. The threshold was lowered, but now they have more obstacles. In the 21st century, and you can, prove it yourself, a lot of people rely on e-commerce, various services that you can activate, use, or pay for online. I'm personally buying and doing a lot of things online, and it's the same even in the countries like Russia. So such internet shutdowns, especially in the big cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, lead to the collapse of various businesses, especially in the sphere of retail, in the sphere of services, taxis, flowers deliveries. I'm talking about flowers because this prolonged shutdown of internet was during the celebration of the 8th of March. that many Russians celebrate very loudly, very generously since the times of the Soviet Union. And there are tons of messages of various delivery services that were unable to carry flowers to the recipients because internet was not working, voice calls were not working, and even GPS navigation collapsed. So there are tons of people who are very dissatisfied, who are losing real money, millions of dollars literally during every day. And it lasts for a very long period of time already. If you want to know this development of internet shutdowns in Russia, we may speak about the beginning somewhere around May in 2025. And people were warned about that in Russia. They knew it is coming because the Kremlin was preparing a celebration of the Victory Day, Victory Parade in Moscow, and understanding that they become weaker and weaker with each day, unable to protect their territory, they feared that the Ukrainian drones may show up, and this will definitely humiliate Putin in front of Xi Jinping, who visited him there. So it was the first time when they seriously tested internet shutdowns in Moscow. Then it was St. Petersburg, also when Putin prepared for a traditional Navy parade and did not want to see live how Ukrainian drones sink Russian warships. So first they decided to shut down internet in St. Petersburg, and then guys, they simply canceled the parade. It did not happen last year, and I'm sure it won't happen this year because Russians have nothing to show. Thumbs up for that and subscribe if you're new. So, but these were days or hours. Then they practiced similar shutdowns in very different regions of the Russian Federation. First saying that the main reason is security, defense of strategic objects, that the Ukrainian drones now use mobile internet. But everything changed in 2026 when the amount of missiles that we can produce locally in Ukraine, not asking for permission, grew, and now we target a lot of their military sites with the Ukrainian homemade. I love using this. I know it's not the perfect term, but I like it. It's like homemade missiles to target various military sites like Bryansk, Kremny L factory, unique for the Russian military industry, or something in Tolyatti chemical production. Well, like a lot. And there are beautiful rumors about the ballistic missiles that we are testing already and soon will be testing on the legitimate targets in Russia. They can reach Moscow facilities, they can reach St. Petersburg facilities, so we will see how quickly the world will become a safer place with more and more of the Russian military production sites, arsenals destroyed. Trust me, you need that too, because Russia is the main sponsor of wars and conflicts around the world, and we see that in Iran right now. So these were shortages concerned about security, but now it's obvious we use missiles. Missiles don't need mobile internet, and the Kremlin needs to keep shutting down internet. And here in this freedom-loving democratic world, we think according to our typical patterns, and we blame Russian censorship, that it's very typical for them to keep shutting down sources of information, and we see it that way. But you all know in Russia they have this white list, black lists of internet sites, and they were pretty effective in filtering the information people want to get access to. And the decision to shut down internet is actually something big, something that can definitely provoke protests, even about people who do not care about politics at all, but care about, let's say, their flower delivery business. So it took some, I cannot say courage about Putin, but it took some destruction, danger to make this decision, and still he made it. And that's why Russians who know their country way better, and another reason why you need to follow this channel, because I'm able to read and analyze what they share. So according to the Russian mindset, Russians analyzing Russians, they think Putin fears a coup. So it's not that he hides the information from them, prevents protests. It's just like on the periphery. It's also good, it's also something that he cares about, but it's not central to his decision. Because once again, this is not an easy decision. So the most down to earth Russians believe that he shuts down internet more and more often, testing the technologies, testing the reactions of the people, because he prepares an unpopular decision, like the general conscription. They lack people, nobody wants to join the Russian army, especially now when they have no money in regional and federal budgets to pay the war criminals. Their payments halved, like no motivation. They know they do not return alive from the front line. So they stopped conscripting as previously, and not having more money, not being able to invite enough foreigners, the Kremlin looks at its own population, and Putin may actually announce this conscription. And it was very unpopular even in 2022, when the situation for Russia was way, way better. A lot fled the country then, and so on. But this is one aspect. Another, perhaps the most interesting one, is that by shutting down internet, the Kremlin protects Putin from any potential coup. And they name a person who may be responsible for this coup. Like, maybe there are a lot of them coming, but the one candidate is Shoigu. You know, Shoigu was the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation for quite a long period of time. And only his failures on the front lines led to his substitution, even though he spent decades on Putin's orbit. He had a lot of common businesses, interests. There are tons of photos of them together, hunting, fishing. So he was a close friend, if it's possible to say so about predators. But anyway, he was substituted, but he got some positions in the Council of Security, some other military-related positions. But one by one, during a year or a year and a half, his former deputies were all arrested. The reasons are very typical for the Russian Federation. Corruption, yes, because Russia is the mother of corruption. And if you have some negative associations with the countries that were once trapped inside the USSR, blame Moscow, because communism is an extremely unrealistic system. And people develop their skills of, like finding connections, solving the problems, deciding something, just because there was no competition, there was no opportunity to get anything apart from being directly connected to this communist hierarchy. And this is how corruption was implanted from the Kremlin to other countries that suffered from it. And now it is still the heart of corruption. And I believe a lot of things that the Russian army thought about itself were actually on paper, because these deputies, ministers, were selling or destroying everything. But it targeted Shoigu's group of influence very seriously. And his last one, deputy, was arrested a couple of days ago. And there were a lot of quarrels and rumors about that. And many believe that the FSB actually feared to arrest him extremely aggressively. And now he is under home arrest with a lot of comforts provided. But many believe the reasons for his arrest was not corruption, which is a tradition inside the Kremlin. Putin is extremely corrupt, maybe the richest person on the world, and that might be a reason why Trump loves him so much. But anyway, many believe that these deputies of Shoigu were arrested not because they are corrupt, that's okay for Russians, but because they were preparing a coup against Putin, who constantly loses support from his population. Remember, when in 2022 he described his special military operation as a blitzkrieg that would bring them a lot of money, now they see with their own eyes explosions on their streets, they feel how empty their pockets are, they understand that war is not good when it develops on their territories, and each day this front line is growing, actually reaching Moscow. So he's losing support, and any person who can actually decide to substitute him may be supported by the masses. And Shoigu is considered as such a person. Once again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, which seems 100% realistic, but Russia is such a swampy mystery land because, Prigozhin, tell me please, did you expect that Prigozhin would organize this march on Moscow, will threaten the coup, that he will do it so quickly? And by the way, he was the one to blame, Shoigu, Gerasimov, maybe you remember his addresses like that. So did you feel it was coming? No, I did not. When it started, and once again, I'm Ukrainian, that follows very careful all the updates, all the details, something that I do not share with you because it's minor, but for me it's important. So I didn't see it coming. No one in Ukraine saw it coming. Maybe our SBU or GUR, I don't know, but it was not a common knowledge. And it seemed totally unbelievable, and Russia was not prepared. Governors of the regions through which Prigozhin marched to Moscow were not prepared. Nobody tried to stop him, actually. Neither police, no FSB, no army. He could reach the Kremlin. He just stopped for the reasons we don't know. And it seemed very unbelievable. And internet shutdowns, mobile connection shutdowns were very common all the way of his march. And now when people see that Shoigu's deputies are arrested, Shoigu may want to protect himself. He has a lot of connections and knowledge in the Russian forces. And now internet outages that include a lot of decision centers in Moscow, beginning with Kremlin and finishing with Lubyanka. This is getting more and more interesting, but the most important conclusion, be it realistic or not, is that millions of Russians think this way. Millions of Russians think that the coup is coming. Why? Because they see 100 reasons that may lead to this. Putin losing control, Putin being humiliated on the geopolitical arena, negative budgets, deficits that are worse than in the 90s, criminal situations on the streets, and many, many, many more. And the fact that Russians, who are often cowards, who hide from the reality, who pretend they don't know about the war crimes or the problems, finally agree that their country is collapsing from inside and Putin is to blame for that. They won't blame themselves, even though they are full accomplices. They supported the idea. They just don't like to lose. That's why they will try to find someone to blame. And Putin may be that one. And to prevent this from happening, he shuts down internet. Let me know, what do you think about this theory? And also, it would be very interesting to learn, whom do you see as a potential substitute for Putin tomorrow or in 10 years? Do you see such person inside the Russian Federation, be it good or bad, but just interesting? Who is the realistic heir of the collapsing Russian Empire? Subscribe to know more from this part of the world and demonstrate your support to Ukraine. Consider joining as a sponsor of the channel. Now we have this option, and there will be some more updates for people who join this very warm community. Thank you for buying me coffees, becoming my patrons and sponsors of the channels. Also follow me on Anna from Ukraine for daily updates and other social media platforms, the links to which you will find in the description, same as the link to the merch shop, where we have a new Easter drop that will not just bring you joy, make you look beautiful, but also turn you into an ambassador of Ukraine, reminding the world about our fight and the need to defeat Russia. We need that. United we stand. Slava Ukraini!